Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. Hope everybody's well. First week back after the the passing of the first half century of my life. So had a nice time. Went up to see my brother. Gave him the big lens I showed you. So he's now got a little bit of extra reach with his camera. So it's a nice little thing for him to have. And I had a nice quiet meal. It's all pretty chilled. Definitely got to that point where my birthdays are a damn sight less rambunctious than they would have been when I was like 18 years old, a few years ago. In return, my brother got me this, which is a really quite nice gin. Finish. It's a Finnish gin. I was going to get some of this in preparation for Christmas, but my brother got me that, so that saved me a few quid. It's not the cheap stuff either. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I treated myself to a movie, Edge of the Axe. Not seen it before, don't know anything about it. Just picked it up. It was cheap, so yeah, looks pretty decent. There's a lot of talk about pizza. I must stop because I will get hungry. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be watching Equinox. We were going to watch something like Sword and the Sorcerer, but I kind of figured this is. I saw this. I think it was Richard. Turned me on to the playlist that this comes from, and I have seen it before. It is quite good fun. It is very low budget, and it's got some kind of interesting history. But looking more death metal, I see there. Fair enough. Well, when we went out to have a meal over my birthday, my mum's like, kind of like, "Oh, you've filled out a bit." It's like, I know what you're saying. I'm fat. But I don't know. I think I've gotten a little bit kind of like, I've kind of filled out a little bit. I don't think she was saying I was fat. I've put on a little bit of weight. I'm 50 years old. I think I fucking well learnt that, don't you? But yes, there's a good playlist on there. So now we've got two, and I actually figured out how to pin the two lists to the Rambleaholics page. So it'll be quite good to have a bit of a nosy through that and try and figure shit out. But it was pretty cool, and I got back yesterday, so chilled out yesterday, chilled out most of today, in fact. But hopefully, I will be trying to finish off the rest of the writing over the weekend for the Devil's Review. I keep saying I'm doing it, but just haven't had much energy for it, and it's really difficult to write when you don't have the kind of like mental energy to do it. But yeah, remember Equinox on Channel 4 back in the early 90s? Oh yeah, that was yes, I do remember that. That was pretty good. I vaguely remember it. Ooh, Finnish Gin says Kerry hands over glass. Yes, if you were here, Kerry, absolutely. But you'd have to wait till Christmas for me to open it. I'd make an exception if you were here. Midlife spreading coming. Yes. It's okay as long as you don't get too bad. It's okay to have a few extra pounds. I don't care what the doctors say. You spend all your life worrying about being, kind of suit fit and interim, this, that, and the other, and you can just keel over just as easy. You should take a certain amount of care of yourself, of course, but yes, always make room in your life for a little bit of a treat. But I imagine my brother's lurking, so hello, Gary, and thank you for having me up over the weekend, and thank you for the posh gin. I can't remember if I've tried this one before. It's oak seasoned gin, so I shall put that over there, lest I get tempted before Christmas. But it was very quiet. Didn't get much. I mean, I got the gin. It's pretty much it. My mum gave me 20 quid, which will be going into my telescope mount fund, so I can actually have something to sit the old scope on. Oh, by the way, I now have an extra scope on top just because I need to double barrel this motherfucker. It's a finder scope. It's got a little laser sight on it and everything. Kind of essential. Good evening. Yeah. Oh dear, what we got? Got anything in there? Weetabix topping. I'm not sure what to use for. I think some of you've got some weird eating habits. Just in case, it has been really chucking it down here just a little bit earlier. So if you're hearing a noise in the background, it's probably that. It's either that or it's my landlord banging about, which I don't think is going to happen. But yeah. Oh yeah, Simon, you were at the Mayhem Horror Festival in Nottingham last weekend. Yeah, it sounded like you had fun. You sounded a little down about about it all finishing. Kind of glad you had a good time. It looked like you were having a good time on from your posts and stuff. And funny enough, I was just down the road from there as well. Probably should have. Well, if I'd realised it was on, I would have possibly made an effort to come over. Although my brother's not got a car anymore, so we'd have to take the bus, which is kind of slumming it. Oh dear. Reference to fascism, Sarlo the film, and pizza toppings. Okay. Manger. Always keeps coming back up, that one. I'm always quite proud of the fact that I'm one of the few voices that really does stand up for that movie. So many people I know really hate that movie for whatever reason. I know, it's not a likable film. It's not supposed to be a likable film, but even so, it's. Yeah. I was tossing up whether or not to make this just a straight up Rambleaholic, but then I kind of went, I'm not quite sure what I would talk about, and now I do have a potential upcoming project which will involve a couple of familiar faces if I can persuade, which might be an interesting little experiment if nothing else. It would kind of hark back a little bit to the Lost in the Static days, in certain respects, but probably be a live show. I am contemplating whether or not we just sort of sit down and have a chat, and I edit it and put it together, or whether we do it live. Do it live. But it could be interesting. But it wouldn't be watching a film kind of thing necessarily, because that becomes very, very complicated. And that's one reason why I don't tend to have a lot of guests on watch-alongs, is because everything gets very complicated. It gets, particularly for me, because it's very difficult to kind of route everything in the right direction. I've got to set a lot of stuff up. But just watching the film is a complete and utter pain in the arse, because I've got to have 2 sets of headphones on, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit shit. But, yeah. Don't know if it's confirmed, but Paramount are going to be releasing Hellraiser 2022 in Europe. Oh, really? Okay. I'd like to see it. I've heard mixed stuff about it. Some people, I don't know. It's always a thing when you get the remakes. Some people can be uncharitable, and it's always hard, before you've seen it, to work out whether or not it's people just being uncharitable towards the film because the original was a classic or whatever. I don't know, but I would like to see it because it does look like it's pretty decent. And some people say it's really boring up until the last third. You sort of go, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I've never been afraid of a film being a little bit boring, as long as it's got a point. Oh yeah, my brother showed me Top Gun Maverick. I had zero intention of watching that film, but my brother had got it on Amazon, so I ended up watching the thing. And no offense to my brother, I did not like it. I don't resent it when people sort of recommend something and I don't like it. I'm not like kind of you've got no taste, yada yada yada. it's it's a very, 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 very derivative film. It rips off at least about four influences that I can think of. There's a bit of Firefox in there. There's a bit of Star Wars in there, apart from anything else. And when it's not being those films, it's basically pretty much reimagining, if you like, the first film. The dialogue is fucking terrible, and it goes much more into the action film territory, in terms of kind of like what's the best way to describe it? Because it gets really ridiculous. It gets really ridiculous. I mean, you got like kind of Tom Cruise, and this is not really much of a spoiler because it's right near the beginning. Nick's a hypersonic aircraft to kind of like, well, he kind of doesn't follow the rules because he's a maverick. And he breaks the Mach 10, pushes it a little bit harder, a little bit too hard, and has to eject at Mach 10. I don't think that's possible. Not unless you wanted to get torn to pieces. I think you would literally get obliterated. They don't show you the ejection in it. It's just kind of like... so I don't know if they came out in a little capsule or something like that, but even so, it'd be like kind of hitting a friggin' brick wall. Admit I quite enjoyed the second Top Gun. They're actually proper stakes as opposed to the first movie. Yeah, you know what? I am not trying to persuade anybody who liked it that they shouldn't like it. I just kind of like, my God, I was just... every line of dialogue, wow. It's just like thick sliced ham. and some people might enjoy it because of that. Personally, oh God, I mean, I don't get on with the first film, to be honest with you, so... but I'm kind of glad my brother showed me it, because at least I can go, yeah, I gave it its day in court. But yeah. Come on, Glenn, Top Gun 2 was good. No, it wasn't. Not by my standards. It was awful. I just wanted somebody to slap that fucking grin off of Tom Cruise's face, because he's constantly... I just expected him to kind of yank a kitten out of a basket and bite its head off or something. It's the Top Gun anthem is kick-ass. Actually, the soundtrack to the original was really good. I did enjoy that. Probably wouldn't enjoy it as much these days, but yeah, I really did. I mean, I enjoyed Top Gun-ish back in the day, but I kind of... I've soured to that kind of Hollywood filmmaking an awful lot over the last 20 years. The direct-to-video Hellraiser films are piss poor. I pity poor Doug Bradley. It was a paycheck, wasn't it, at the end of the day? I don't think he would consider any of them masterpieces. The weird thing about the Hellraiser straight to DVD films, a lot of them was just, they weren't Hellraiser films. It's just a random film that kind of like either didn't get made or was kind of like augmented and kind of like retrofitted to have Pinhead turn up at some point. And they may have been pretty decent stories in their own right, but they just wouldn't have been successful because just getting the interest in a new IP is very difficult. It's actually one of the things I want to talk about to some extent in this thing that I'm kind of trying to get together. It's talking about franchises would be something I would be kind of interested in doing at some point during that, because you can get a really rich conversation out of that. Kind of interested in Tony Scott. Saw The Last Boy Scout for the first time recently. It's not quite Lethal Weapon, but it was still enjoyable. I remember enjoying it quite a bit at the cinema. It was back in those days when Bruce Willis was still kind of like looking like he was enjoying doing what he was doing. So yeah, it was all right. It was all right. But I think the whole kind of Tony Scott kind of look, which is very, typical of the time. That's that kind of very slick, sort of hyper saturated, uh, very smooth kind of cinematography. Um, it it kind of bores me a little bit. Because so many of these films look the same. I mean, it's very, Michael Bay's stuff has that kind of aesthetic. Because, if I remember right, he sort of came from that kind of school of filmmaking. Apart from anything else, obviously, he started off in kind of music videos and that kind of stuff. But Tony Scott and the likes were very kind of influenced by that whole sort of advertising and music video kind of short form filmmaking, and their kind of striking imagery and kind of colours and the kind of way everything sort of looks, the contrast and all that kind of stuff, sort of harks from back in those kind of days, which is why a lot of particularly 90s films do have that sort of very similar, almost too slick kind of vibe to them. Yeah, Tony Scott was a very talented director, but very underrated, and definitely in Ridley's. Yes, he was. He was in Ridley's shadow. I think. I mean, let's face it. Ridley got very, very lucky with Alien in some respect. It was a film that wasn't really. It wasn't really kind of destined to be a mass interest film. At least not according to the studios, and they weren't that interested in it, which is why it only had, it had a reasonable budget, but it wasn't sky high, and they weren't super enthusiastic about it until it kind of like everybody started loving it, and good luck, good on him for that. I don't think Ridley Scott's a bad director. I think he's a very specific director. Most of his most remarkable films are very visual based. I know that seems a little obvious being a film director, but he tends to kind of have these sort of very visual worlds, and most of the other stuff tends to kind of fall behind that, which is why Alien was such a good project for him, because it is a very visual film, but there's not a heck of a lot of story. But what he did with the tension and stuff in that, which I think was partly kind of driven by the budget, because he couldn't do an awful lot of Alien stuff really, comparatively to what he might do today. But he handled all that kind of build-up attention and that pacing really, really well. I think for most people these days, the first Alien film is probably way too slow, which I think is why a lot of people prefer the second one, although that is a slow film. But it has a much more sustained kind of action sequence, action kind of stage within it. Don't mind the advertising-esque visual look in my movies. Favourite director ever, Jean-Jacques Bignet. Came from that background too. Yeah, I mean, it tends to be because I think I now sort of relate it very much to the kind of vacuous 90s action films that just got shat out in Hollywood. It's funny, some of the low budget rip-offs of them are a lot more charming than the actual inspiration. But like I say, I would never want to discourage or kind of like disparage anyone who likes that stuff. It's if you've got something you like, then that's a good thing. I think the cast made Alien what it is rather than Ridley Scott. They certainly put a fuck ton into it. It has to be said. They are a massively important part of it. Yeah, I kind of wish with the Alien series that they kind of hadn't been so obsessed with the character of Ripley going on. Maybe with the second one, the third one onwards, it could have done with moving away. it would have been more interesting in some respects if it had been Newt that survived in Alien 3 or Hicks. That would have been potentially more interesting. Just a pity about Prometheus and Covenant. Those films are absolute toilet. Visually incredible, those films. It has to be said. Now, I like the style of it, of both of those films, but the story is a mess on both. Bear in mind, obviously, Covenant's very much a kind of reboot. It's not really a sequel. It's barely a sequel. It kind of really makes a minimum effort to kind of tie itself in with the first one. Because it's like the events of the first one are very, very inconsequential to Covenant. But there's a very ill-conceived kind of high-minded sort of thing that's supposed to be going on in it, and it just doesn't work. And I don't know what it is. I think it's as much. I don't think. Well, the writer on the first one, was it Damon Lindelof on the first one? It was some TV writer, or something like that. And the writing on the first one was messy, and they couldn't really recover it, so they sort of had to kind of restart again. But I kind of get the feeling sometimes that Ridley Scott's not necessarily that good at really exploring incredibly heavy topics. More than he is concepts. Really has a background in art and design. Yes. All good actors in Alien. Yeah. And for the most part in Aliens as well. I can't think of any bad actors in Aliens. Great actors in Alien 3. Alien Resurrection was just, some good actors who were kind of wasted. Resurrection was a mess. I'm just not a fan of that film. To the point I'm just not that interested in watching it. Glad I've seen it, but it just feels so out of place. It's kind of weird. Whoops, forgot about Veronica Cartwright. Yeah, no, funny enough, and no disrespect to her, but her character is one of the least interesting in the film. It's a shame she doesn't really kind of get to really kind of redeem herself. First two Alien films are about as good as each other. They're just very different, I think. And that's a good thing. I think the first four are very different to each other. It's not necessarily a bad thing, although it didn't work for Resurrection. I love Alien 3. I think Alien 3 is a great film. I don't have the emotional commitment to some of the other characters. Be it Ripley or Newt or Hicks, they're great in the film. I like him in the film. I didn't think it was really that big a deal when they killed off two of the characters. For me, I thought it was a perfect beginning to kind of reset the situation in some respects. Very sexual and primal the alien is, yes. Giga's a bit of a kind of a perverse guy in some respect. He was. I don't mean that in a bad way, but he has a very kind of kinky kind of edge to him. Best character in Aliens was Jones. Yes. Alien Resurrection is overdone and suffers from them putting way too many things into it. Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it. For me, the whole kind of smaller cast worked so much better. And what I appreciate about the original, the first Alien, was really the kind of deep sense of isolation and these characters being, from the beginning, out of their depth. And there's some great stuff in Aliens as well with the. It's essentially, it is a Vietnam allegory. It's kind of a late one, but it has those kind of vibes. And it handles that quite well, the cocky Marines going in and then getting their asses handed to them by the low tech locals. Royal fans of the Marmalade Tabby, yes. Something appealing about big male tabby cats. Well, Scorsese's going in a completely different direction, isn't it? Imagine if Hicks was in an Alien versus Predator movie, Terminator and reunited. One thing I despise in sequels to good movies is when they kill off likeable characters in the opening few minutes. It's the equivalent of a slap in the face to fans of the previous movies. I don't think you should feel that way. As long as it's done with purpose and reason, I think it's perfectly fine to kill off even the beloved characters. It can be a very powerful tool if you do it right. Some people would say that, it wasn't done for the right reasons in Alien 3. I kind of think it was. As imperfect a film, as flawed a film as Alien 3 may be, if those two characters had survived, then that film would have been about 10 times worse. Because it needed Ripley to be thrown into this tragic and upsetting situation where she's surrounded by just danger from humans and aliens. Yeah. Yes, I agree, Minty. The crossovers too tend to be Hollywood just banging their toys together somewhat. But yeah, killing off likable characters is actually, I think it's almost the only meaningful way to have a death in a film is to have a character that is both interesting and very often likable in some respect. Alien 3, again, too much was attempted. Studio was trying to muscle in on the director. Yes, there was a bit of that going on. I think the ending was one of the things that they really kind of compromised. But as far as I'm concerned, the Alien films should have ended there. Alien 3, no more. And, I kind of wish they would just sort of... for all the faults of Prometheus and Covenant, at least they were trying to do something different. And I've always said I'd rather see 100 failures from people being original than a film just get successful because it's just feeding back the audience exactly what they were asking for. It is one of those things, isn't it? It's like with the Star Wars stuff. There's some differences that are made in the film. I think, overall, the story was incredibly badly handled by the end of it. By the end of the second one, it was kind of irreversibly damaged. But the whole kind of talk of subverting expectations and stuff like that, it kind of gets hammered on somewhat. I think it's a noble effort. When they try to do something different, when they try to push the boundaries and kind of make it say something which is different. And even the whole kind of thing with the Luke Skywalker being this sort of space bum by this point, if they'd written it properly, that would have been perfectly fine. That you can find a way for this incredibly heroic character to have fallen. That would have been fine if it had been kind of justified in the writing. And unfortunately, it wasn't. Was it? Not at all. Read the Gibson script and screenplay adapted to comic a few years ago. It felt more like Resurrection than A3. Okay. Yeah, actually, Alien 3's original script was actually kind of... they went through all sorts of far out kind of ideas. I think it was Fincher's original desire to have the planet as a wooden planet, essentially. But... which which is weird but kind of interesting. And Finch is a bloody good director, so. Right, I shall say, because, we're half an hour in now. Get yourselves ready, folks. Link is in the description below, and we'll get started with the movie in just a minute. Wasn't the sequel trilogy meant to follow the same beats as the original trilogy? If so, they missed by miles. There was a bit of a conflict of interest, I think, going on, wasn't there? There was a conflict of goals, I should say, rather than interest. In that they wanted to basically reboot it and make it for a new audience, but still sort of retaining the Star Wars kind of feel, but entirely make it their own. And that's kind of pretty much come from down from up top when it came to that stuff. But there were so many people, I think, pushing and pulling in different directions that they just could not pull themselves together. And I think that was the problem. There was a clash of egos and ideas, and Kathleen Kennedy wanting one thing and J.J. Abrams wanting another thing. Then Rian Johnson wanting a different thing. It's just like, I don't think it was ever destined to be so tied into the originals. And if you can let go of that a little bit, then they're potentially not quite as bad. Well, at least until the third one. The third one is fucking terrible. I mean, literally one of the worst films I've ever seen, in my opinion. But yeah. I think that was it. It was as much a conflict of purpose between various factions within the creative staff that caused those things to really go off track. These things happen. Kathleen Kennedy should probably have sat back a bit and basically concentrated on making everything unified. But she actually went in and kind of like got Rian Johnson in, was very active with encouraging him to go his own way with it and that kind of stuff, which can sometimes be a good thing. But if you've got a trilogy, you really ought to plan that shit out first. But then again, the original trilogy wasn't very well planned out, despite what George Lucas may say. He didn't have it all in mind. Which Alien 3 script, though, they went for about 20 or so. Yes, they did. Combination 2 different scripts by David. Yeah, I don't know what generation it was, but there's pre-production ideas that the artwork of what Fincher actually wanted originally. Rian Johnson more like he's not a terrible director. He was probably the wrong director for that situation, I think, in my opinion. See, I'm not one of the people that thinks that The Last Jedi is an intrinsically bad film. It's more, it does have some terrible bits in it, but it's more that what its purpose was supposed to be, i.e. a sequel to The Force Awakens, and then running into the third one. What he did in that was utterly wrong. Because you can't just divert it like that. And stupid decisions like not allowing Princess Leia to be, when they knew that Carrie Fisher had died, they could have re-edited it so Princess Leia died in that scene. And then adjusted from there, rather than trying to carry her over to the third one when it was never going to work, really. Okay, folks, so give us a thumbs up and we will get started with Equinox, which is a 52-year-old film. So it's older than me. David Toy of Widdick fan. Yeah, as soon as I see some thumbs up, we'll get started. Rian Johnson made an awful film which everyone hated and accused fans of being racist. Yeah, I don't know quite how much of that was just his ideas and that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of sexist and misogynist kind of stuff going around as well. There was all kinds of stuff. There was legitimate stuff and very illegitimate stuff. Okay, Minty is ready. So you know what? We're going to get going. Cool. Alrighty, well, we'll start at 000 and we'll get cracking in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Now, one thing to look out with this movie is that it was originally conceived and created as a student filmmaking project, so it was a shorter film than it is in this form. And what happened was they sort of came back and revisited it and added extra stuff, which is the film that we have here. So you will see some continuity errors. As I understand it, and I have seen this before, but I don't remember seeing it in the first time. One of the lead characters, his sideburns change length depending on at what point the shoot was at. It's like a new series of Antiques Roadshow. I do remember really enjoying this the last time I watched it, but it was a long time ago. One little interesting kind of side avenue when it comes to sort of film studies and that kind of stuff is paying attention to credit sequences and stuff like that. You can often tell a well-made or a well-written story from how good its title sequence is, because often there's a lot conveyed within that time. Oh, excuse me. The clacking is eerie as fuck. Motion Picture Association of America. That symbol always makes me think it's like the Goodyear blimp, but with like rocket engines on the back. You're just looking at it from behind. Equinox. Notice that I've been growing sideburns, not full-on sideburns, but the signs of death. Embrace the sideburns. Now, this is a wonderful example of actually rather skillful amateur filmmaking, but amateur filmmaking nonetheless. All the hallmarks of very low budget movies are in this. But it's also one of those films that you sort of look at and you go, it's actually quite amazing the amount of things they managed to achieve and how imaginative they are. I mean, see, some of the shots that are in this sequence, for instance, are framed interestingly. You know, there's interesting angles going on and all that kind of stuff. It's just pretty good. Is this our Ash character? Yes. Blue Iris is actually kind of touched upon something which is also notable about this film, in that it has been kind of suggested that Sam Raimi saw this film before he made The Evil Dead. And there is a lot to be said about this film in terms of the kind of uh, inspirational aspects of it. And something I said about B movies, I think it was on the might have been on the last stream. In that you see films like this and you sort of go, I can do that. I can do that. It's very hard to say that you can do it really well, but there is a certain amount of encouragement that you can get from films like this that, yes, you can make a movie. And that's one of the wonderful things about this sort of stuff over the likes of big Hollywood films is, big Hollywood films are kind of like the unattainable. They're the kind of like, the Ferraris and Lamborghinis of the film world in some respects. That you wouldn't dream of getting, like popping the hood and tinkering with. These are much more like your kind of like your reliable kind of old bangers, aren't they? Interesting framing. It's a 70s version of Kit, yes. It's Hannibal Lecter's prison, doesn't it? That's why my writing is mostly influenced from low-budget genre films, Yerosini, Giallo, horror, etc. Do find some inspiration. Yeah, you can find inspiration in mainstream stuff as well. Obviously, you can. But it tends to be the sort of stuff that you look at, you go, I could never do that, and a lot of the time you can't, because who can afford millions upon millions of dollars to create the special effects, and I've always kind of felt, when it comes to like film schools and stuff like that, they should be showing a lot more films like this. It's all well and good showing the David Lynch's and the Tarkovskys and the likes, but those films tend to be a lot more kind of inaccessible. Yeah, right. Yeah, sorry. Did I misread that? You can be influenced by Eurocine. Eurocine did have a good period of filmmaking, at least a better period of filmmaking. Some of Jess Franco's earlier works with Eurocine were actually quite good. Then he did all the kind of like really cheesy stuff, which in its own right, you look at something like Bloody Moon and things like that. It'd be so much fun to make a film like that. Very polished for a student film. Yes, it is. Although, like I say, you got to remember that this film also was kind of like updated, if you know what I mean. They kind of added to it later on. How I don't know how much of the editing is different and that kind of stuff, but yeah, it's a very talented film student. So when you look at kind of films like Within the Woods, if you've ever seen that, the prototype for the Evil Dead, and there's some very cool filmmaking in that. Like, it's rough and ready as fuck, but still very very interesting, very kind of like solid filmmaking going on within it as well. Most Eurocine stuff was utter crap. Yes, it was. Yet to see a decent Jess Franco film. Yeah, I know you don't like Jess Franco. Jess Franco made plenty of good films. He made a heck of a lot more really bad films as well. Like, if I somehow held a job as a film professor, I'd be showing things like Violent Rome, Great Silence, stuff like that. Yeah. I'd show some Mondo stuff if I could get away with it. So that's actually really fascinating. When it comes to like teaching people film, and kind of like we did a module at university called Representing Reality, and that kind of stuff fits into a academic subject like that. Franco is to Simon what Batzella is to me. Yes. I was harsh as hell on Jess Franco when I first saw, because his entries on the Video Nasties list were very patchy, to say the least. I mean, they were generally regarded in his kind of low tier stuff, but not the really low tier stuff necessarily, but definitely in the low tier. So yeah, when you're faced with like Devil Hunters and Bloody Moon and stuff like that, when you first see that, if you're not prepared for it, it's quite an experience. Look at that old tech. School's out for murder. Only Batzella film I'm familiar with is Beast in Heat. We did watch another one, and I can't remember what the name of it was. Was actually rather good. Thing is, so like I don't know enough Batzella stuff to really sort of make the comparison, but certainly with Jess Franco's stuff, for instance, sometimes the film's not about the dialogue, although that's usually an important aspect of it. But the worlds he creates are kind of interesting. They have an interesting texture to them. You can find all sorts of interesting effects using magnetic tape for sound. Yeah, um, it's a very tactile medium. Apparently, the Doctor's voice on the tape recorder is Forrest J. Ackerman. Yes. If I'm right in thinking, assistant camera was Ed Begley Jr. on this. America really does have some wonderful locations. These sort of really remote places. But so many films in America tend to get made in the same bloody places. Sheriff looks like an angry John Saxon. It says a 5.2 rating on IMDb. It's not bad given the genre. Yeah. Two girls, two guys, a forest and a horse. 1960s. It will not end well, folks. Asmodeus. That's quite a name. America's also full of shitholes. Yeah, I know. Any country is, though. So one of the wonderful things about Britain, in my opinion, is we have pretty much a little bit of everything. Bar deserts, but we got, kind of like, you go up to somewhere like the Peak District and stuff like that, it's incredibly barren, or up to the north of Scotland and stuff like that. You get this kind of wonderful barren wilderness kind of stuff. But we've got forest areas, mountainous, very flat areas. I mean, Cambridge is in East Anglia, which is generally a very flat area of the country. But it's just such a wonderful kind of diverse range of vistas that you can film in. America's really good for those big wilderness kind of massive forests that go on as far as the eye can see, deserts that just go on forever, that kind of stuff. So when you want really epic countryside, then America's got a lot more of that. That said, you go up to the north of Scotland and it's miles and miles and miles and miles of nothing. The problem in Britain is you can never shoot a convincing Wild West. But you can do an equivalent. After all, they did Straw Dogs, obviously. It is funny though, and the example I mentioned before, which is Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, and that director had a real eye for the British countryside and kind of like the look and the feel of Britain. And plugging Simon's location video as well should do. Problem with Scotland is it's full of Scots. I like the Scots. I'm a bit more of a northern lad myself, so it's quite fun because you're further north you go, you can be walking down the street and complete strangers go like "Good morning," you come down south, it's like everybody's just like gonna fuck off instead. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess you could do. There's going to be some reasonably convincing parts of France. I expect if you go down to the south of France as well, particularly, you can get some sort of, I guess, Midwestern type stuff going on. It's a book. What does it say? Kind of Necronomicon. I mean, Scotland can't be all bad. I mean, they give us the haggis, but I do genuinely like Scotland. It's a beautiful part of Britain. And I kind of like the Scottish sense of humour as well. It's sort of very me. Southerners and east side, south are more from Central Europe. Movie like this cheers me up when I have a bad day. Yes. And it piles along at a reasonable pace. It's not, things are happening slowly. We get a little bit of a build up. It's old fashioned in that respect. Doesn't have to open up with a hugely ridiculous pace. That's a pretty cool special effects in this as well. This is one of those movies where you can tell where the budget went. And the actors are just good enough to sell it. Used to crack my mates up by showing them videos of Scots being Scottish. Scotland's very nice. One or two distilleries around. Yes. Don't think Scotland's unique for that, but yes, if you want a good whiskey, and Scotland is pretty much a must-go-to sort of place. Always a good idea to enter a cave with a massive flaming torch in hand. Yes. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that. It's really not as easy to get a torch to work very well when you kind of just cobble one together. Unless you've got a fuck ton of kerosene and some really good tight wadding. It's the world's most eccentric bookshop. He's got one book and he's been waiting for at least 150 years to sell it. The American Adventure theme park. Oh god, yes. I never went, but I do remember it. I was always more of a Alton Towers guy. Oh, did I? I might have gone on a school trip to Drayton Manor, actually. Got that a while back. But not the American Adventure Park. So what the fuck? Do you think this is a library? What an eccentric performance. Gary and I went earlier on this year, to Alton Towers. We got on 3 rides. It was that busy. I didn't even know it's still open, to be honest with you. It was pretty decent back in the day. It wasn't Alton Towers good, but it was, yeah. Don't read it out loud, lads. I wonder if it was a certain amount of like kind of British attitude towards America that kind of made it like, why would we want to go to Yanksville? Kind of thing. Gulliver's Kingdom, bloody hell. What was the theme park south of London? I feel dumb for getting the name. I don't know that one, to be honest with you. If you ever went anywhere near London, the main place that we would aim for as kids would be Hamley's Toy Shop. KFC at a picnic. Interestingly enough, though, Colonel Sanders did do a lot of promotion, funding of films like that, as long as they had a promotion within the film. And Colonel Sanders himself appears in a lot of low budget movies because his company would fund these. He was quite altruistic towards new filmmakers. Probably Thorpe Park. Alton Towers is up Staffordshire. Look out, he's got a book, yes. Alton Towers is a great place. Some really cool rides. Although it's interesting to see, a whole bunch of the old rides I used to go on have gone now, including the iconic corkscrew. But those things don't last forever, so... Yeah, it's tough to get on the rides. It's usually so busy. If you manage to find a quiet day, it's good. It's not cheap. Actually, it's not that bad. Actually, if you book ahead, it's cheap enough. It's north of Derbyshire, isn't it? It's not actually Derbyshire. It's a bit further north. I think it's Staffordshire. I might be misremembering, but it's not. It's not actually in Derbyshire. You go through Derbyshire. So one of the first big roller coasters I went on was the corkscrew on a school trip. It's very pretty, is the village of Alton. Right back. Jim, he's dead. Well, quick, get rid of the body. Better eat him. Just read page 36 of the book and he'll come right back to life again. But he might be changed. It's tax returns book, yeah. Turns out he's actually investigating Trump, and that's Trump's tax returns. Anyway, apparently these scenes were shot in Bronson Canyon, which is a national park in California, but they didn't get permission to do so. You know, when you're on that kind of budget, you rarely do. Turns out it was an actual ranger, and the only way they got past him was to give him a bit in the film. Trump's tax returns won't be on any paper. It's either on that or it's on several different pieces of paper, one for each occasion. Well, there's a lot of trees around, mate. Colonel Sanders turned up with a bin bag and cleaned up for them, because he's just that kind of guy. Interesting soundtrack. Apparently the caves seen in this film have been used in Army of Darkness, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and even the original Batman. Ah. I love the kind of scouting for locations in some films, especially in films of this kind of nature, where they've either got like local knowledge or whatever, but just finding these wonderful places and making the best of them. Cave interiors were using this were actually a set built in someone's backyard. I imagine it's safer to do that, but probably easier as well because you're not having to set up a whole bunch of cameras and lighting. You get shots like this, it's clear they're kind of using natural daylight and maybe some reflectors, and that's about it. Which is, when you got like kind of day for night sort of stuff, as if, for instance, it's often a case of necessity because they can't get huge power banks and all that kind of crap out to locations like this, generators and things like that. I think big Hollywood films have far, far less excuse for it. Oh, hello. Feels almost like a George Romero film in this bit, doesn't it? Maybe a John Russo movie. Basically, whenever a Hollywood studio needs a cave, they come here. Bad cop, it's non-consensual. Don't think hypnotism counts as consent. Oh. This is exactly what I do used to know. Slightly uncomfortable, kind of like used to the close up on the cop's face or Ranger's face. Naughty Ranger, yes. His kiss face is a little eccentric, isn't it? Cheap as chips version of Rosemary's Baby, yes. There's a good point, Kerry. Possibly too much information there, but Oh, there you go. If there was any doubt that Sam Raimi saw this film, then that one shot should probably kind of clear that up. It's maybe cheap, but the acting isn't at all. Well, one of the things is it's all ADR, obviously, and that can have a something of a detrimental effect on film. Yes, part of the mystery is all, isn't it, Minty? Go on, Professor Noby. Did you only watch the cut version there, Kerry? So when it came to Evil Dead, I got to see the second one before the first one because the second one was not banned. First one didn't get a release in the UK till quite late. After, pretty sure was it after, no it was it's like kind of like early 90s it first got its re-release. But yeah, obviously at the time the first Evil Dead was a lot harder to get hold of. I do remember seeing the VHS for Evil Dead 2 in the video shop and getting it out. Now we have Phantasm Sorter. Eh. You do get a feeling that a lot of filmmakers like Sam Raimi did see this movie. Although that book's a little bit too clean, isn't it? It really they could have distressed the pages a little bit. It's a bit too crisp and white for 1,000 years old. It's one of the things that really stuck out to me the first time I saw this film. It's the stop motion. I look at those camera angles and stuff like that. I mean, that is definitely something that must have influenced Sam Raimi. It's proper middle class preoccupation summoning demons. Japanese sex toy there. Yeah, the practical effects and stuff like that. I mean, you've got stop motion. There's forced perspective sort of stuff, special makeup effects, optical effects, and all sorts. It's really, you know, it's despite it being quite a humble little package that it's in, it's got a lot of stuff going on. Well, thank you for the translation, love. It's a shockingly well done film. Like I say, it's in a rather humble kind of package, and uh, it's not super slick in many ways, but it really kind of puts a lot of effort in where it counts. There we go, to summon a demon. Anyone have a cross or a Star of David? Yeah. Oh, a fuss budget. Everything naked notes. It's not. It's not one of the cynical films of this nature, is it? Though. I know I'm kind of tearing this apart, but I'm actually enjoying it. Yeah. Cool. Look at that camera. Equinox. Dear oh dear. Beastie at the door. Whoa. split screen. It's quite nicely done. It's good. Castle's got a cloaking device. So is William Shatner turning up. Well, you never know your luck. Harryhausen would be proud. It's like, I mean, the split screen stuff, all that kind of stuff. It's done pretty well in this. It's all these film making techniques that they you wouldn't expect to see in a film like this, to be quite honest, and it's there. Yeah, stop motion does look a bit weird by today's standards, but it's a pretty good example of it. I want to see an army of skeletons coming across the hills now. Strangely, they did film episodes of Star Trek in that area, so Shatner may well have been there. Quick, find a long stick. If it'd been Barbara from Night of the Living Dead, she'd have just bought a little twig, wouldn't she? I found a stick. Damn it, man, there's no time to whittle. Well, that was silly. Sure, the park rangers would have loved the fact that they're kind of really fucking up that little bit of cliff there. It reminded me of some old film where cowboys rode into this valley and found a dinosaur. Valley of the Guanji, I think it was. I don't know. Oh, look. Monster ape on a stick. He only wanted a little read. Which remembered Harryhausen stuff. The one thing that really sticks out in my mind is always the skeletons, because there was something about the stop motion stuff and skeletons which kind of just worked really, really well. They're kind of, that very jittery sort of movement just kind of felt very appropriate. Yeah, I'd have thought priority one would be just to get the fuck out of there, but considering what they've just been up against. Very confident of that. Should probably go over and take its pulse. Whoa. What do skeletons do on Tinder dates together? Go on. Very confident in the fact that, just casually take a photo. Don't worry about the fact that there's some very, very strange shit going on. They burn. They're all losing their charms. Oh no. Big ass roll of film. What he doesn't realise is that wasn't actually a river. That's just the stream of piss from the demon monkey. It's just what we needed. Is more close-up of amorous cop dude. I'm not much better myself, Minty, so don't worry about it. I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul. It's not a very committed strangling, is it? It's like, uh. Rubber rock. It's not as bad as the one in Bloody Moon, though, is it? The big boulder that comes down that's clearly styrofoam. Have I wandered into the Blair Witch Project? I think this guy has stunt eyebrows. You clearly have the skills of arts and crafts. It's not who I am. It's what I am. He's turned into Audrey too, hasn't he? Girls, car. How about a certain girl? How about that Audrey? Spent a budget on short so those beefy eyebrows, yes. Very, very patient and talented caterpillars, aren't they? Oh God. I think they went to work. Went on to work with Roger Moore. Damn my arts and crafts skills! I can't make the magical amulet that will save my life by bending some fucking twigs. Thought my light was getting dim. Vicky, stop. No, it's Vicky Phillips. I think his voice actor was, I don't know if it's actually him or if it's somebody else did him, but the voice acting on this is a little funny sometimes, isn't it? Now, Vicky. Okay, Vicky. Oh, here's Jim. Ooh, it's the time tunnel. I know I knew that name from somewhere. It's all done in camera. Anytime you like, Mr. Asmodeus. I've got all the time in the world. Take the dangerous item that every monster in this world and the next is coming for. Not bad effects. It's really good, you know. Considering these guys who are working with next to nothing, and that giant, some of that forced perspective stuff's really effective. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, let alone plan. So yeah. It has definitely gone down the Phantasm line now, hasn't it? Sheriff turns up and just goes, "Boy, you're back. What did you miss?" Well, you missed the movie, apparently, Kieran. If you haven't seen this, Kieran, you should watch it, though, at some point. Oh, you've been fooled. Tricky Asmodeus. Been watching a ton of stuff, as usual. Sat down and watched Hostel. I don't like Hostel much. Yeah, that's Eli Roth. He's like very enthusiastic guy. Cannot write characters for the love of his life. Oh, I've done so many bad things with Jim. You know, there's a bunch of places in Eastern Europe I'd like to go. Probably best wait until, shall we say, current events have been done. My factory's a bloody suburb of Eastern Europe. I think any personal sort of interactions I've had with people from Eastern Europe has almost always been very positive. They tend to keep themselves to themselves. I'd like to think that he works in a factory of hopes and dreams. Either that or super secret military equipment. Oh yeah, leave the important book behind. That's smart. They're not the most terrifying evil creatures, are they? Just a teeny tiny little crucifix will scare them off. At least Linda Blair, as Reagan, would at least give some lip back. It's bat thinking, his wings of steel. Crikey, there's a blast from the past. Oh. Seemed to have stumbled across the graveyard in Night of the Living Dead. See, rhubarb and custard. That was talking when it comes to old cartoons. I think that devil just made a very, very serious tactical error. Oh, now did you just leave the book behind? I love the theme tune to Rhubarb and Custard. It's just a trippy cartoon. Oh come on, I could do a better scary voice than that. Oh, Button Moon, bloody hell. It all goes round, doesn't it? It's like poetry, it rhymes. Now, you'd have thought you'd have seen that coming since it happened at the beginning of the film as well. These characters, they just never learn. Well, stay them. I don't know if you guys remember a series called Chucky. seem to remember that having um, at the time quite scary stuff going on in it, or at least creepy. Well, Chucky, I don't remember too much of it. I do remember it being quite creepy though. Mind you, I mean, I remember Day of the Triffids on the BBC being very scary for me back in the day. Not Chock-a-Block, no. Oh no. That can't be good. The end. Question mark. Oh dear, oh dear. That was good fun, that one. Uh, yeah, been a little while since I've seen that. I'm just so glad I actually kind of chose up tonight to actually watch that. That's good. Dear, oh dear. Sapphire and Steel, yes, that had its moments as well. That and Tales of the Unexpected. Um, Threads, because that was a TV movie. God, there's a movie you don't want to watch at the moment. Holy crap, that was really enjoyable. It is a good film. It is a good film. So I'll say that basically, the playlist that's on the Rambleaholics page now, you can that there should be featured posts. The two posts that had a couple of the suggestions from a few weeks ago. There's two playlists there with a whole bunch of stuff on. So you better have a nosy through, and there's quite a good selection there. There's enough to keep us going for a very long time. Captain Scarlet. Oh God, yeah. Okie dokie. I think we're going to call it a night there. Hope you enjoyed all of that. I certainly did. Should be back next week, I think. I don't think I... Yeah, should be back next week. Of course, next week will be... We'll probably have to call the next week one the Halloween one. So on the Rambleaholics, feel free to make some suggestions, and maybe we'll make it a double bill, something like that, on a Friday night maybe. But we'll see. But yeah, on the Rambleaholics, have a look through the lists and stuff like that, if you can find some good suggestions for that. Otherwise, I will just find something and we'll do that. I think that'll be quite good fun. But yeah, so I'll just say thanks very much for coming along. And thanks to all of you on Facebook who kind of wished me a happy birthday and that sort of stuff. And of course, for my brother. Yeah. Have a lovely weekend, whatever the hell you're doing. I shall hopefully be trying to do some writing tomorrow. I keep promising myself, and then I wake up in the morning and go. But definitely, I've got to try and get some writing done this weekend. And hopefully, if I can do enough writing tomorrow, I'll be able to get it up by the end of the week. Well, the video, that is. You filthy people for thinking that. But I shall bid you a good night. And, yeah, have a good weekend. Minty says, I'll be away next Friday. That's not acceptable. Whatever it is you're doing, I hope you have a good time. Take care, folks. And I will see you on the next one. That night.